let me introduce the moderator to get us started. Gerald Tock is the COO, Strategy and Partnerships of iCandy Interactive. He leads the strategic initiatives and partnerships within iCandy Interactive and is the concurrent CEO of InZen Studio. iCandy Interactive is an end-to-end ecosystem builder that bridges, connects, and grows Southeast Asian game developers towards a global audience via its partner network. All right, Gerald, let's get started.
Thanks, Gabby. I'll just introduce the panelists. We have Justin from Redbana, who's based in Manila with key operations in the US as well. And then we have Kenken from Lyto, who's key operations in Indonesia, based in Indonesia. And we have Chris from VNG, who's based in Vietnam. So you'll get to see an interesting spread across the different regions. I'll let each of them do just a quick intro. So Justin, you want to take it from here?
Hello, everyone. My name is Justin. You guys can call me June as well. I have been in global game industry for 17 years, and I'm currently CEO of Redbana US, and been in Philippines for 5 years so far. And I'm also one of the board member of Game Developer Association of Philippines, which we call GDEP. And I can see that there's a former president of GDEP, Gabby, here. Actually, Redbana is a publisher and developer for the PC and mobile platform games. But compared to other game company, Redbana has some unique business structure, which is we work two different offices work together, which is one is one in Manila in Philippines, and one in Irvine, California in US. We work together to operate the game 24 hours to cover global game market. We are publishing 3 PC platform games, such as dance simulation game called Audition. Maybe some of you guys already familiar with. And 2 MMORPG genre called Granado Espada and Aka as well. And also, we are publishing 2 mobile games. One in action RPG game called Arcane Dragons, which we got featured on App Store in US market last year. And second one is Hexamon War, which is a tactical RPG game like Summoner's War, and which is on soft launching period in Philippines, Canada, and Australia right now. And we are planning to launch globally in June 7th, which is right next month. Hexamon War is it's gonna be first mobile game who developed the 2 different countries together, which is South Korea and Philippines. So Korean team is from the former Game Will Come To developers, and Philippine team is from Redbana. So this is a former creator of Summoner's War. So we are very excited to see how it goes in the market. So if you guys have a question about Hexamon War, I'm glad to meet you guys right after this session. And I'm really excited to be here to share our experience, how fast Southeast Asia market growing up. Thank you guys.
Okay. Hello, guys. My name is Kenken. I'm working for the Lyto, Indonesia. Lyto itself is established at 2003. And at the beginning, we focusing for the PC online game. The title, maybe you already know some of the title. The first is the Ragnarok Online, and then Crossfire. It's from the Smilegate. We're also publishing in Indonesia. And then RF Online, Seal Online, Granado Espada also as well. We have Maple Story also we publishing. It's totally there is the 14 games. We quite good for the partnership with the several country. It's from Korea, China, Japan, Russia. And we partners with the Mail.aru for the Alots Online. And now for starting 2015, we're focusing also for the mobile game. Mobile game, we mostly cover up for the Southeast Asia market. We want to starting for the Southeast Asia market, and then we will also go to the worldwide. I think that's the key point for the Lyto itself.
Thank you, Kenken.
Hi, everyone. I'm Chris. I'm working for VNG Corporation in Vietnam. So we're sort of a platform company. We call ourselves internet company because we do a mobile messenger in Vietnam called Zalo and music and TV called Zing as well. So we're sort of following the Tencent model, where we have a large base of users from our platforms, and then we publish games via those platforms. So our main businesses are in Vietnam and Thailand, and we also have around 300 developers, which also publish our games worldwide. So we're focusing mainly on Middle East, North Africa, and Western Europe market right now.
Thank you. All right, so just for the audience, we're going to be covering a few key topics today. The first one is a bit of a hype thing, right? Whether VR or HTML5 and what each of these guys think about it. The next one's actually the vision for Southeast Asia. There's been a lot of talk about the growth rate within Southeast Asia. So has that actually played out as expected? And what are some of the challenges that these guys have faced? And the last one, we're going to talk a bit about what markets that all of these guys are bullish about. So maybe we'll just do a quick round with VR and HTML5. So Justin, what are your views on VR and HTML5? Is it a thing? Are you sort of getting involved in it as a company?
Definitely. Actually, the VR market in Southeast Asia, I wouldn't say we already take off, but it's slowly moving forward to the airstrip right now. For example, the top university in the Philippines, such as Mapua Institute of Technology and La Salle University and University of San Carlos, they start attending VR Summit and organizing some seminar in Philippines right now. And then in year 2015, some VR developers established their association. It's called VR Philippines. So in Philippines, industry-wise and educational-wise, we are slowly moving up. But market-wise, if I go to some big shopping mall, there's a VR section in the arcade, and actually kids are lined up there. So there's no exact figure or number how many VR units have sold in Philippine market yet, but there is market and slowly moving forward. That's what I can say about the VR market.
I think I have the same perception about the VR in the shopping mall. It's also happened in Indonesia. Focusly, people want to directly play daily for the game. I don't think so. They play the VR. They prefer to play in the mobile part or the PC part. It's, I think, more common for them. But for the VR, it's kind of like the family fun adventuring. So it's like located in the shopping mall. We call it the VR zone. Many people to come to play, and mostly it's the kids. That's for the VR. But for HTML5, for Indonesia, we quite have the similar like Japan. We skip the browser games, HTML5. The HTML5 before it's only famous in the Facebook games, but now there is no longer the Facebook games famous. It's more likely people play in the HTML5 with the famous IP or something. If the famous IP like the Marvel or something, they willingly to try, but it's not like the daily play. As I remember the HTML5 kind of the game, it's also now in Indonesia happen famous to the worker. Because they're using the PC and you can alt tab while you're working. Because mobile game every day you're playing. And then your face is to the mobile. But when the HTML5, you can hide. Sometimes you can skip or everything. In market share, this HTML5 is not growing up. It's more focusedly for the mobile. It's also considered that the mobile selling penetration for the Indonesia is, I think, is #1 in the Southeast Asia. Samsung, LG, STV5, they all doing the penetration mobile is very strong, and they keep selling the new kind of the model of phone. So mobile game is the VR, and then with the HTML, I think it would be something in the new kind of, there is the different market, but not become the majorly.
Thanks, guys, for the insight. Actually, I agree for VR in Southeast Asia, there's no market. So it's not going to be a very high grossing revenue market at the time. We are actually developing a VR game with one of our top IPs for the global market as well. So I feel like developing in Southeast Asia with a global audience is for your cost base is a much better strategy than actually penetrating the Southeast Asia market any time in the next 5 years, maybe 10 years, I don't know. HTML5, so Kenken said that Indonesia is similar to Japan. Well, Vietnam is more similar to China in that web browser-based games are huge. We're huge. At the peak, it was over $100 million revenue a year. So it was probably number two, or number three browser-based market in the world for games, especially MMORPGs. And we know now that in China, they've had Legend of Mir has nearly $20 million a month HTML5 version in China. So we've actually signed quite a few HTML5 games for Vietnam, and we're developing our own. And mostly, I think HTML5 work well because in China, they for WeChat and QQ, they have an internal mini browser inside which you can open directly in the chat program. You don't need to leave the chat program. So for our Zalo, we've developed the same thing. So we're going to be using that as well to push for the mini browser games within our app. So we see a lot of potential in Vietnam for HTML5 games. But in terms of revenue right now, only hardcore MMORPGs. Casual is not there yet.
Regarding HTML5, personally, I really like that languages because people doesn't need to download the file into their device. And in terms of source code, it's very lightweight. And also, we can play in the PC, mobile, tablet. It's like all-in-one program languages. But when I talk with our internal development team, they are a little concerning about technical issue for HTML5, which is like a security issue. And there's some data storage issue that what I heard from our dev team as well. So, but if technical issue is all resolved, the market-wise, as a businessman-wise, I think it's a great language to develop the games. So in the future, technical issue definitely going to resolve this comparability with issue with web browsers. So definitely I'm waiting for right time to develop the game for HTML5.
That's pretty, I think this was quite interesting because observing from developer, publisher, sort of more publisher, and sort of end-to-end, because Chris, VNG has a bit of a deeper integration into the ecosystem, you're actually able to influence the way the market works, right? And sort of have that first, would you say like a first advantage because you're moving fast in, and with the model that's been established by Tencent, right? Cool. So actually, this also brings us to an interesting point in terms of the infrastructure within Southeast Asia, which we're actually covering in the next bit. So the vision for Southeast Asia and some of the infrastructure within Southeast Asia that makes operating here quite a unique challenge in some ways. So I don't know, Justin, you wanna take us through that first bit? What was your vision for Southeast Asia? How, like, why did you pick it? And
Sure. When I was in US, only market information for Southeast Asia was like research companies like MPD groups or NewsU. But since I have been in Philippines for 6 years so far, now I realize why people said Southeast Asian market is emerging market. Because when you look at our revenue stream from Redbana for worldwide, actually the revenue from Southeast Asia is not big as North America or Europe. But however, when you look at the compound annual growth rate, it's more than 40% every year, which is way bigger than North America or Europe market these days. And then secondly, when I look at the internet connectivity situation in Southeast Asia, actually the average internet speed in Philippines is like a 4 Mbps, which is slowest speed in among Southeast Asian market. But however, there's one of biggest telecommunication company called PLDT. They just start service 1 gig Mbps with the fiber optics in year 2015. So even the internet speed isn't getting faster. So to me, I think there's a bright future for Southeast Asia market.
so in spite of that, what okay, maybe I'll just sort of move to Kenken a little bit first before coming back into some of the, yes, there's some interesting stuff going on about some of the challenges. So Kenken, what sort of, what can you highlight about the markets that you operate in?
Okay. For Southeast Asia, we have the several countries. several countries that quite the promising. The challenge, the big challenge for us is like the localized. This among for the Southeast Asia country, we can say like the Indonesian, Vietnam, Thai, and Philippines. First, they have different language, not only different language, different letter. If like the Indonesia, we using the alphabet, Thai is using another, Viet is using another. It means well you do the localized, even though you can launch by the English version. The preference for the user would be like the local language. When we talk about the localized, it's not talk about like only the language text. It means how you do introduce your game, and until the user for each country acceptance your game itself. There is another challenge for that. It means based on the Vietnam, Thai, Indonesia, the user behavior also is totally different. That's why this is the big challenge for each country. They want to publish the mobile game in the Southeast Asia. Another challenge is about the payment. The payment. You know, in the Southeast Asia, if you're launching with the Google or with the iOS, the payment is using the credit card. The penetration of the credit card in this country is very low. It's really, really very low. That's why you need to cooperate with the local payment. Another problem for the local payment itself, there is every country, they have the local payment, but they don't have something like one cover up for all the things. It's better when you go to have we won't get the revenue for the Vietnam, it means you need to go to the local payment Vietnam. You want to get money from the Thailand, you need again to integrate with the local payment Thailand. You want to get revenue for Indonesia, you need to search the local payment for Indonesia. You need to go to the Philippines, you need again partnership with the local payment. It's like very many jobs that you need to do for launching one game. I think that's the challenge.
Okay, so I completely agree with all the localization points of Kenken. So I'm gonna go for like a market scale. So for the research that we've done, since it's very hard to do research because you can't just go on App Annie and look at the Google and Apple numbers, right? Because the local payment in Vietnam is 90% of the revenue. So unless you're asking people in Vietnam how much money did your game make, or you're asking the local payment providers like the telcos, you don't know what their revenue is. Right, so just from our estimations, Vietnam and Thailand around $300 million a month, and we see Indonesia and Singapore, Malaysia at $200 million each, and Philippines a little bit lower. Right, so I'd say Southeast Asia is around $1 billion market right now, and we project it in 2 or 3 years to be at a $2 billion market. But how is it going to get there, right? And for us, we think, aside from the localization issues, I think infrastructure is important, as Jun mentioned as well, because the phone specs is really big, right? In Vietnam right now, we're getting mostly Chinese games, right? So obviously, yeah, we get Chinese games because, a lot of the cultural things are popular. But why are we not getting Korean games? It's not because the young people don't like Korean things. It's because the specs are very high. And not just for the phone, but for the internet as well, right? So when these games are real-time action RPG and your internet connection is slow, you're pretty angry when you see the little, rolling screen all the time. So I think the infrastructure is going to be a big, mover in Vietnam. And you see Vietnam, you see all these cheaper Chinese cell phones coming in. You see the people with the phone specs to play a lot of these high-end games growing. So that you have to move along with the market as well. And even for payment, you see in Thailand right now, like True Money is working with Alibaba to do local payment. I know True has that virtual credit card with MasterCard now, where you have like a wallet credit card. You don't have a real credit card, but you can still pay on Google, Apple, because you're using a prepaid credit card, right? And we're trying to do the same thing with Zalo Pay in Vietnam, right? Because in Vietnam, it's a similar issue because we're fighting with Google and Apple. I hope no one from Google, Apple is listening, but we're fighting with Google and Apple every single day about third-party payment, right? So we'll hide it here, they'll find it, we'll put it here, right? So it's the infrastructure is going to catch up. I believe that one day we're all going to move to official store payment once we get there, once we find ways to get there. But for us to be moving forward, there's a lot of infrastructure challenges, payment, localization, and lastly is just game operation, right? You see like MOBA game, right? Like Garena, you know, I hate talking about them because they're a competitor, but you know, they're really great with their League of Legends and their mobile game, which is going MOBA, right? And then there's another game called Mobile Legends from Elex, which is also doing very well. But I think in the end, Garena is going to win out because Mobile Legends doesn't have a local team doing local esports and local community and translating to local language and keeping local giving VIP gamers VIP treatment, which is very important in Southeast Asia. Right, so at the end, it's a whole all the way down. You know, you need to really localize and really be on top of what's going on with the market to succeed. Which is why I think a lot of, you know, to be honest, like Korean, Japanese, or Chinese companies in Southeast Asia, you know, don't always compete well is because if you don't have a local team there managing and making local decisions, right? Like, for example, June moved to Philippines, right? Like, when you're making decisions from headquarters, it's very difficult to really meet the requirements that you need to really succeed, excel. Yeah.
I just have a question for Chris. So what is the lead time, do you think, between when the infrastructure sort of gets together and when, you know, Google and Apple will the payment provision sort of works itself out?
Well, Google is working with local telcos. I know Indonesia, are they doing that too? Yeah. So Indonesia, Vietnam, and Thailand. I know that I'm not sure about Philippines actually, but you can talk about that later. But as I know that they're working with local telcos to provide payment, right? But that's hard because Google and Apple want to take 30%. So what did the telcos get in the middle, and how much are we going to pay in the end, right? That's the big problem. That's a big challenge. Yeah, a telco adding another 10%, right? 10%. Right. So this is really difficult for us, and I think that's really up to how Google and Apple work with local telcos, and I think that will take time. I think Google, obviously, you know, Google usually moves a step faster on these things, right? But you know, I think in the long term, it's going still to stay 30%, but they're going to have to find out some kind of way to work together.
Yes, I think this point is very important, right? We do the business, the mobile. One of the purpose we getting the revenue. But now the mostly problem is we cannot get the big revenue because of the Google or iOS still consider only using the credit card. I think some people that already know that Southeast Asia is the gray area for the Google and the iOS itself. It means that you need to work with the local. So hopefully for the Google itself, but I see the Google is already doing some move to cooperate with the local to getting the money, because if everybody going with the local, how to Google to get the share for every time of the game in the Southeast Asia?
Actually, there was a presentation from Google yesterday. Actually, Google already worked with some local mobile carrier company. For example, in the Philippines, they're working with Globe and Smart and Digital to make us some mobile payment method making.
I want to add, can I add one quick comment? Is that I think there's two examples that I want to look at. One is in China. In China, obviously, there's no Google, so everything on Android is local payment, right? But on Apple actually worked with a local Chinese provider, so you can use UnionPay bank cards to pay on Apple, right? So if you see the Apple revenue in China is huge, right? Because Apple has worked with a local provider to do that. Now, whether they'll do that in Southeast Asia, that's another big question. And point number two is for Taiwan. Taiwan is a very developed country, but it's still 30% local payment. So I feel like local payment is something that's not going to go away. It's just a matter of how much.
Actually, in Philippines, as Filipino doesn't have enough income to create the credit card in the market right now. So what they do is they got some virtual credit card. We pay Paymaya. And they got the credit card number without plastic card, and they load or charge in the 7-Eleven kiosk or bank transfer. So they're using that number to purchase the item right now. And also recently, I guess you guys saw the big booth out there, like Woot, created by Surpass. They also have some mobile game platform with a new payment method. So slowly we have been expanding our market without new payment method in Philippines right now.
Okay. I summarize all this thing. The point is, the developer need some work for integration. It means there is when you go to the Southeast Asia, it means not like all your apps or your SDK is finished like that. It means there is a lot thing that you need to do. One of the thing is you cannot avoid. This is payment. One of the thing is that.
So that's pretty interesting. Perhaps at this point it might be good to. Is there anyone from Google here just to check? Right? Is there? Oh. Okay, there's no one from Google here, so I guess we're safe. But it's probably going to be broadcast later, so I don't know. But so it's pretty interesting because I noticed that we covered quite a bit. Payment seemed to be a main thing, of course, because we're all in the business to generate revenue, and payment provision is one of the key parts of that. There was an interesting thing that I think Kenken brought up something about there is an issue with some, because if you integrate third-party payments into for Google Play builds, there's some issue there. So I don't know. You wanna
Okay. There is, I think Google also already knows it, but they still cannot find the legal way because Google is the globally. They need to make one rule. They only cannot make like this rule is for Korea and everything. So included the Southeast Asia, they cannot make like the rule is only for Vietnam, only for Thai, or only for the Indonesian itself, right? So a little bit like the Google, they want to see first what's the happen, what's the trick. Well, we are publisher, right? When we didn't get the money from the revenue, we think the another way. We didn't think like, oh, okay, close the game. No, we think the another way, how to get the revenue from the others, right? We manipulate the APK. It means like doesn't have the button, another payment for at the certain level, maybe after the certain level, 10 level or 20 level, and then there is an extra button. At the beginning, Google, I think, will not check because they check only the first time. They didn't play until level 20 or something. Right? Sometimes that is the one of the trick. Maybe the another 30 trick that that we can search in the apps of the Southeast Asia.
So I think one of the things is that there is the presence of the official app stores, Google Play, as well as the App Store. But there are other third-party stores, and there are other third-party solutions and there are other solutions also that you can work on if you are publishing within Southeast Asia. But it would be good to consider partnering because some of these guys have figured out the tricks already, pretty much, and the tips already. So I think let's circle back a bit to Justin.
Right. Actually, I think as I mentioned earlier, the average internet speed in Philippines right now is about 4 Mbps, which is the slowest internet speed among Southeast Asian market. But we are growing up. So when we launched the game in Southeast Asia, the spec-wise and the bandwidth-wise is very important. So our new game, Hexmon World, we can run our game with 3G networks, and also we can run our game into low spec like a Samsung Galaxy 3 with a 1 gig RAM with a 4.1 Jelly Bean OS. I think the specification is very important to launch game in Southeast Asia right now.
Okay, I will add something. So, in the market for the Southeast Asia, we eat all of the thing. It means the genre is in. We welcome everything that is not specific the genre that we need this time. We accept all the genre because now is in the Southeast Asia market we can consider, especially for the Indonesia, is the growing market. They accept all of the thing. Okay, but one of the problem that I agree with Justin is about the smartphone spec. The smartphone spec is for the Indonesian country is the middle low. So when we go to the middle low, the graphic and everything, the developer need do the optimizing the spec and also the size of the apps itself. If your apps, the game apps, the size is like 700 mega, 800 mega. The phone itself is only contain like 16 gig or 8 gig. I believe that the mobile gamer, they didn't install only one game, at least 3 or 4 games, right? If you already have the family, your kids will be installed is more than 5 games. Instead your currently you play games. Considering the middle low specs, the size of the apps also it can be need to be considered a lot. This is one of we as the publisher concern. We cannot take like the 1 gig apps. Oh, this is too big. Unless your game is worldwide known well, like Clash of Clans, Candy Crush, Summoner Wars. It's not about the size again. This is your pride to play the game.
Chris, actually, I have a quick question on that. Because you operate across Southeast Asia and global as well. So how do you manage the split between that? Is it different types of games for these different markets? Or?
Yeah, our studios are actually independent, right? So we have studios that do publishing, which take games from mainly Korea, China, Japan, and we publish it in Southeast Asia. And our in-house development studios, which we have some in Beijing, in Hanoi, and Ho Chi Minh City, they'll develop and publish globally on their own, right? So everything is independent budget, independent, plan, independent everything else. But we do have some services like business or technical, which are integrated together. Right. I see. Yeah, it's difficult when you develop, publish, and do platforms and stuff. So I think management is like the top management. That's their main job, right?
Now I guess we come to the component of, so has Southeast Asia sort of played out for you as expected in terms of this year and or last year and the strategy for last year?
Okay, actually, as I mentioned, that the economy is growing up and internet speed is getting faster. So I would say Southeast Asia is way better than played out than before. But also, there's another positive things going on in Philippines right now is actually there are 48 million people are using internet, and among that number, 38 people are avid gamers, which is it's very easy to listen how they feel about our game. So to test our game and to optimize the business model and what's a good feature for the people.
Okay, from my perspective, mobile game I think is one of the cruel business because when you do the competition, it's the worldwide competition. And another thing, when you want to get another area, it's very easy. You just one click button, open and then finish. It's not like you need to open sometimes you doesn't need to open another office and everything. You just click button, open and finish, right? So for last year, what the expectation? I think some of the famous games is ruining our plan. For the example, Pokemon. When Q2, of course, when we planning Q2, we're planning in Q1 or sometimes before. We already planning, Q2, we want to launch this game and everything with the developer, right? And then come the famous game, Pokemon. When we get the featuring, it's featuring together with the Pokemon. How come you will win? So that thing that it's not will be expected for our like the publisher. So this competition is the worldwide competition. It will be very, very harder for us, for the publisher, because we also in the Southeast Asia, sometimes they quite following the worldwide trend, not only for the Southeast Asia trend, they following the US trend and Europe trend.
So I think the growth of the market has a lot to do with how much money is being put in, right? And what big games are being put in. So in Vietnam, the local publishers, we spend millions of dollars on licensing fee and marketing every month. And in Thailand, it's such an open market. The Chinese and Korean companies are spending millions of dollars on licensing and marketing every month, right? But if you go to Indonesia, for example, which is the sexiest market, right? Good job. But at the same time, you see that the revenue is hard to get there. I mean, obviously there's a lot of challenges, but it's also because some of the top games and the top money is not being thrown there yet. And same with Philippines, right, as well. And in Singapore, Malaysia, you see just people still see it as a small market. You can make a short-term revenue. So in that sense, I do see that, I feel like Vietnam has grown in the past year above our expectations because people are paying so much for these MMORPGs, and the specs are going so quickly. I think Thailand is hitting our expectations. It's sort of maintaining at its current pace right now because it was very, very open. And I think Indonesia for us is the big next question, right? Is it going to be bigger than Vietnam and Thailand in terms of the gaming market? Because right now it's definitely not, right? But potentially it could be much more. But of course, Kenken's talked about, I think the withholding tax is quite high. The cost per VAT tax is quite high, right? There's a lot of barriers there, which is not bringing the money and the best games in. But I feel like if you look at the Taiwan market now, right, like it's kind of slowing down because Chinese companies aren't throwing as much money in. But when they were throwing money in, it was growing to a point where Taiwan is like double all of Southeast Asia market, right? But I think it's a lot to do with what games are coming in and sort of how much money is being spent in by competitor, how open you are to competitors. Right?
Actually, I just have one question, since it's interesting from a company outside Indonesia who's going in, and a company within Indonesia that is competing within Indonesia. So for Chris, is it a hold strategy for Indonesia? Is it going aggressive on the market?
No, not yet. Actually, I'm planning to visit Kenken next month and have him take me around. We're actually focusing mainly on Vietnam and Thailand. Those are our main markets right now. And for self-development, we're doing overseas. I think looking at Indonesia right now, we sort of see it like Vietnam. If you come to Vietnam, you can't compete with us because you can't get a license, right? It's like China, you need a license, right? And only a local company can get a license. So if you don't get a license, you can still go on Google and App Store. But if you use local payment and you do really well, someone will come find you and you're not going to be able to get your money out of Vietnam, right? So it's a restrictive environment. And we feel like Indonesia is still a little bit at that point right now. So it's very hard to make money. I know some Korean companies are making money, but it's not huge yet, right? And there's a lot of restrictions, but Thailand's completely wide open. Right, anyone comes in, and there's no government barrier. There's no registering a company is easy, right? So obviously it's very competitive, but for us it's okay. At least you don't feel that kind of restriction. And then the kind of games that are Thailand are a little different than Vietnam, but the sources are still Korea and China for us, right? So we still see that we still have some sort of thing that we can scale in those markets. Right?
Every country in South Asia have the hard barrier and also have the something that they cannot deny. For example, you cannot get big money comparing with Vietnam or Thai for the Indonesia. But Vietnam and Thai still needed Indonesia because we are very huge for the CCU base. It means your game, even though the player is not paying, you need to CCU. You need to someone play the game. Example for doing the PvP tournament and everything. How come that if you have the game, you have the feature, the live PvP big tournament, but there is no the player? So that's why Indonesia take that part. For next 3 years, 5 years, of course it will be paying rate, it will be increasing a lot. It's the proof that every year Indonesia paying rate and also the economic is always the increasing. Yeah, that's true that you will be very get out the money from Vietnam. You will be very get money from the Indonesian player. In Thailand, the language is the most harder from the Vietnam and Indonesia. It's everything, but the Vietnam have the advantage, right? This is like open for all, free for all. Everything have the same chance in like that. So from summarize for the developer side, when you go to the Southeast, at least there is 3 strategy that you need to build up.
Justin, you want to talk a bit about your Southeast Asia strategy after hearing?
Sure. Actually, this is what we missed last year. Actually, I want to talk about the localization again. But this time, I don't want to talk about localized game text. I want to talk about localized game community. Because last year, when you launched the game, we localized different languages for the game itself. But we never thought about how we're going to communicate the game community for each own languages. As you mentioned that only 30% of Thailand people, they only speak English. So most of them speak Thai languages. So for Hexmon War, we already prepared a team, internal community management team that we can communicate with them with different languages like Thai, Vietnam, and Malaysia and Indonesia right now. So localize not only the game and also in-game community is very important for me.
So maybe it's time to look at, because we've talked about the challenges. We've also talked about some of the. So I'll just summarize the challenges quickly so we can move on to a bit of the future stuff. So I think we covered phone specs and bandwidth. We also covered payment and localization. And we also covered some of the store regulations and some of the government regulations that make working in Southeast Asia pretty easy. Not really. So maybe we'll move on to this year. So with where your company is at, what's your focus for this year and how are you positioning within the market? Perhaps Chris, you want to start?
Thank you. So our main target in Vietnam this year is that in terms of mobile games, we're sort of have a really good position at the moment. We're focusing on two things. One is esports for mobile games and creating the community of esports. So we've just launched Crossfire Mobile in Vietnam right now. So doing very good. We're using our Zalo platform, doing quite well. And obviously, we're competing with Garena for MOBA. They have the MOBA, we have the FPS, and a wide array of things. And number two, we focus on our local payment in Vietnam. In terms of overseas, Thailand is our main focus. We want to grab a big chunk of the market there as well. So we were signing, for example, Crossfire, like I mentioned, or other games. We're signing for always Vietnam and Thailand. And for Indonesia, we hope to work with a local partner. So we've sort of decided that for us, sometimes when you sign a game from Korea or China, they're like, okay, just take Southeast Asia. We don't want to split it up country by country. So for us, we're like, okay, so if we take Southeast Asia, we want to do it by ourselves in Vietnam and Thailand, and we want to work with a partner in Indonesia, and potentially one day Philippines as well. Once the paying goes up, we're gonna go there. And Singapore, Malaysia, we've actually decided we're not going to do, because we feel like most people can do it by themselves very well, and it's a very clear sort of model. So I don't think we provide any clear advantage to any publisher in terms of doing that market. Yeah.
Okay, for Lyto, we quite have the top priorities for the PC game because our revenue for the PC is still more than 1 million per month. So PC, the disadvantage is only we cover up for the Indonesia, for the PC game. But for the mobile game, we want to try to focusing in the Southeast Asia. Still the same, like we want to conquer the Vietnam, we want to conquer also go to the Thailand. But basically we also make the infrastructure how to get the, Vietnam have the regulation but the cash out, right? Of course, we publisher as Lyto, we're thinking out how to get to cash out from the Vietnam. It's same thing like the VNG. They also want to conquer Indonesia. They also will come to Indonesia. Each other we'll work together how to how to get out for all of this. At the point is the Southeast Asia is like when we focusing only Southeast Asia, actually it's quite a good revenue for the company itself. When you go to the worldwide, when you go to the Korea, Japan, it will be different case again. It will be like you need to another separate team. You cannot like only for the one company Southeast Asia and then expect it that company also publishing in the Korea, Japan or China. That is will be very hard. So in this year we're focusing in the Southeast Asia, of course.
The biggest goal for Redbana this year is focusing on to launch the Hexmon or global market. And of course, the main market is US and Europe, but also we are focusing on Southeast Asia market as well. That's why we set up the internal communication team for each languages for Southeast Asia. And also, we are allocate some big chunk of money for marketing for CPI and Facebook marketing for this market as well.
It's quite interesting just covering, taking a step back and looking at the strategy effectively. So for Chris, it really is focusing on the key markets that you're strong in, and you have the infrastructure and the back end to connect everything with ZaloPay, as well as, what was the social platform? Zing, yeah. So with Zing and ZaloPay, so you're really focusing your efforts there, and the game on top of that creates this circular model. And with challenging markets, you're working with a partner to do that. And then with Kenken, really is the base is Indonesia. The PC market's still strong. There's good revenue in Southeast Asia. You may partner or work with parties to find out interesting ways of dealing with government regulations in different countries. And with Justin actually being a developer publisher, it seems like you're still focusing on the global, so the revenue from US and Europe is still a stronger base for you. And then sort of seeing as Southeast Asia as a place to base development operations and coordinate that while working with partners also within Southeast Asia. Does that sort of sum it up? Okay, cool. So I think we've covered quite a fair bit today. Right now we will open up for questions. If anyone has a question.
Hi, I'm Jester from Definite Gaming. We're a studio in Manila. We're focused on social casino games. I'd like to get some feedback from you, especially from Indonesia and Vietnam. How is social casino games? Do you publish social casino games? Is it that complicated? Because normally it's a gray area in the Southeast Asian market. So I want to know about, for example, in Indonesia, especially Indonesia and Vietnam.
So yeah, social casino. I love that term. So yeah, we have so social casino. We have a platform called Zing Play. It's roughly making around $2 million a month in Vietnam on mobile. It's a collection of different card games, especially local ones. So obviously Texas Hold'em is one, but the ones that make most are local ones, right? And like Chinese chess or something. So it's very popular. You cannot cash out directly. There are companies that also do games where you can cash out, but you need strong government relations. But for us, we don't cash out. You just pay in-game coins. And just from that, it's a really profitable business. I know that in China, the new model, they're avoiding government regulations is you're just paying for the time in the room. You just pay for the room. And then after you play in the room and pay, then you pay through WeChat, like offline, whatever you want to pay. And I think that's the biggest model in China that we're kind of looking at. But I do agree that social casino is a great moneymaker. So we've launched our social casino platform in Thailand as well too. And we think that obviously it's not really a long-term goal for us because we think esports, community, RPGs, those are long-term goals for us. But in terms of cash, social casino is Vietnam is a great place. And I don't know about Indonesia, but from what we see in Vietnam and Thailand, are very great markets for that.
Okay, for Indonesia, I cannot deny that there is still the casino or like the gambling game. But you need to know that Indonesia is the number one largest Muslim country. Muslim is actually prohibit to the user to doing the gamble for the gambling, and also the government rule is also that prohibit for the gambling. But still, there is the gambling game in there. You need to have the right way to do the trick in how to do the publishing in the Indonesia itself, because when you're publishing the Indonesia, of course you didn't put the server in Indonesia, right? You put the server in another country like the Singapore and everything. It means the Indonesian government also cannot do something to your server. The hard thing may be only the marketing, right? So that's what will become the problem. How the user or the Indonesian population user know there is the gambling game that you already launched. That's the only problem. The cash out, you can think many things. No problem with who the publisher. I think the publisher will thinking something how to the user to cash out. There is 100 way to cash out from the game.
How about you, for example, as a publisher? Would you be interested in adding a social casino game on your portfolio? Because usually I've worked for a publisher before for PC games. So usually we look for different games to publish. You don't want to publish like 3 dancing games, 3 shooter games. Usually you want a healthy list of different games, right? So what do you think is the value of adding social casino games on the publisher's portfolio?
Okay.
All of you.
Okay. If you work with directly in the name of the Lyto, it's impossible. I mean, it's true that Lyto is already established that we cannot like put the Lyto name gambling for only for this game. There is another strategy. First, Lyto can make sister company, right? Different company name. But you know, at the end, all the infrastructure is like from the Lyto staff and everything, right? That's the point. Company is only the name, not like the company name, and then you will have the different. Some other ways, the people still don't want to do like this because, from Indonesian or what I'm experienced, when you put on the gambling, you need to put 100%. There is quite rare. The company have the gambling game, casual game. That is quite rare. Only gambling game, it's 100%. That company is gambling game. For example, Boya. There is no like the other casual game. Also, there is already company that have the casual game or RPG game, and then suddenly they have the gambling game. This is also quite rare. So if you come to the gambling game, it means either this is new company or the company that already running the gambling game.
Okay, thank you.
You can just send me your APK.
Mainly for Chris, but everyone can answer. So a lot of people go here looking for a Southeast Asian publisher, and what you see is that even for the biggest companies, they're probably dominant in 1 or 2 markets. So do you think it's possible, either organically or by M&A, to become a publisher that can really handle like 4, 5, 6 markets in Southeast Asia and be the go-to Southeast Asian publisher?
So that's an interesting question because I feel like that's where VNG and Garena are going to clash in the next few years, right? Because Garena already has offices in every single Southeast Asia major country. But at the same time, they have not really succeeded outside of MOBA game, right? In every single Southeast Asia country, right? Whereas we have offices now in Thailand and Myanmar as well too. So I think obviously we believe that, which is why we're moving abroad. And obviously we have to see if our advantages as a publisher in Vietnam translate to Thailand. We need to see that very clearly, right? Because we don't have the government protection. We don't have a lot of local resources that we have. We don't have Zalo, right? We don't have our platforms. We're starting just the same as anybody else, right? Even behind line, for example. So that comes to the main question, which is, what's a game publisher, right? Like you go to America, you're like, hey, I'm a game publisher. What's a game publisher? I develop my game, I put it on Apple and Google. Why do I need a game publisher, right? So we still believe that a game publisher is still, even if you don't have a platform like WeChat or Kakao Talk or Line, is still a very, very important role that's going to actually grow as the market matures. And even in America, there's a company called Scopely, which I think has been growing very quickly. And it's bringing that model of game publishing, which is so popular in Asia, to America. And you see so many benefits from the database and the local operations, community, SDK tracking, that publishers do better than developers. Because as Kenken was saying, it's hard to do so many things great at once, which is why I think our company is split into so many different studios, right? Is that it's very hard if you're developing a game very well to also be a great publisher, right? You have to be really big, So in that sense, I think that if it's true that being a publisher is like a long-term profitable business, that you bring a certain benefits that developers just can't do, I believe that one company can translate that publishing ability and localize it across the entire region.
Anyone else?
Okay, from my perspective, the developer actually have the 3 way to do. First, they launch by themselves. If they have pride, then just launch by themselves, and then let's see how big the money will be flow. And the second, that they cooperate with the one company that can cover up for all the region. But in this case, it means you need to choose the company that already have the powerhouse that for each country. And the third one is you cooperate with each region with the local. For this kind, there is advantage or there is disadvantage. For like the develop by using your name by developer. Of course, the money only go through by your. It's big. It means there is no cutting the 70%, right? You get all the pie. And when you work with one developer, one publisher for whole the region, you need to consider not whole this company is good at sometimes they good in the Thai, they good in the Vietnam, but not good in Indonesia. They good in Indonesia, sometimes they didn't good in the Vietnam. And then if you go with every local one, the hard thing is you need to find out the three company. It's also very, very difficult to dealing with the three company, three contract, three company, and everything, right? So you can either choose. Every developer have their principle. How do want today? Easy way, or want to eat all the pie, or just they believe every country have their own localized company.
Actually, for Redbana, actually we are the global publishers. And then when we launched the mobile game, we opened all the IP addresses for all worldwide. And we spend this little spend of dollar for the marketing, little amount of money. And then we see where most of the traffic is coming from. It's from US, or maybe sometimes it's Turkey, or Southeast Asia market. If we found out like 5 to 6 countries, we definitely put more money for that countries. So that's how we deal with it. Yes. Actually, I know the Philippine market is a very smallest market among Southeast Asia market. But development game-wise, I think Philippines is the best country you guys can work with. Because first of all, it's a language. 70% of Filipino they speak is English. So the communication is more important than the high-skilled programming-wise. So I think the Philippines, I would say, is the best country to work with.
I agree.
Secondly, yes. And secondly, we have the GDEP, the Game Developer Association of Philippines. We have a strong ally to support not only indie gamers, also students in Philippines right now. So in near future, I think the Philippines, we can take a lead of Southeast Asia market. That's all I want to say to last word. Thank you, guys.
I think Philippines already take for the customer support for the worldwide. Yes. Philippines is for the number one for the Southeast Asia. Another like the US or Europe, they're using the customer service support from the Philippines.
Everything except the consumer market.
Yes. Any more regional things? No? Oh, okay. Thank you, everyone.